It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in the small town of Maple Creek, Ohio. The sun was barely rising, painting the parking lot of Henry's Grocery in shades of gold and blue. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman, a 67-year-old widow, had just finished her morning walk when something unusual caught her attention. A grocery cart, left near the store's entrance, was moving slightly in the breeze. Inside it, wrapped in a thin hospital blanket, was a baby. At first, Eleanor thought it must be a prank or some sort of accident. But then the baby whimpered. Softly, painfully. Eleanor's heart nearly stopped. She rushed over, trembling, and looked down at the tiny face staring up at her. The infant couldn't have been more than a few hours old. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold and her little fists moved restlessly under the blanket. Eleanor called for help, her voice breaking. Within minutes, the grocery manager and a few curious customers gathered around. Someone called the police. Within the hour, the parking lot was surrounded by flashing lights, officers taking photos, and a nurse gently lifting the baby into her arms. There was no note, no identification, no witnesses who had seen anything unusual. The baby became the mystery of Maple Creek. News spread quickly. Local headlines called her the miracle baby in the grocery cart. Reporters speculated about teenage mothers, runaway girls, and broken families. But as days turned into weeks, no one came forward. Social services named her Hope because, as one nurse said, someone out there must have hoped for her to live. Hope was placed in a local orphanage, a small, well-kept home run by a kind couple, Margaret and Daniel Lewis. They had no children of their own, but had spent their lives caring for abandoned infants. For the first few years, Hope grew up surrounded by warmth, lullabies, and bedtime stories. But as she grew older, she began to notice things that other children had. Family photos, mothers picking them up after school, things she didn't. When she was 6, a little boy once asked her, "Where's your mom?" Hope had smiled awkwardly and said, "She's in heaven." She didn't know why she said it, only that it hurt too much to say she didn't know. At the age of 8, Hope was adopted by the Whitman family, the same Eleanor who had found her that morning. By then, Eleanor's children were grown, and her home was filled with silence. Hope brought life back into it. The two became inseparable. Eleanor would tell her bedtime stories, brush her hair every night, and whisper, "You were meant to find me." And for a long time, Hope believed that. But deep down, there was always a question that lingered. Who had left her there? And more importantly, why? On her 15th birthday, Hope asked Eleanor if she knew anything more about the day she was found. Eleanor smiled gently, hiding the pain in her eyes. "All I know, sweetheart," she said softly, "is that someone must have loved you very much, because they wanted you to be found." Hope tried to accept that answer, but it never really filled the empty space inside her. Years later, that emptiness would drive her to seek the truth. And when she did, what she uncovered would turn her entire world upside down. But before that day came, life had more secrets to reveal. If you were in Hope's place, would you want to know the truth no matter what it was? Hope grew into a bright, curious teenager, polite, observant, and quiet. She excelled in school, always eager to please her teachers, always afraid of disappointing anyone. On the outside, she seemed perfectly happy. But inside, she felt like she was living someone else's life. Every time she looked in the mirror, she saw features that didn't belong to anyone she knew. Her green eyes, her olive-toned skin, the tiny birthmark near her collarbone, none of it matched Eleanor's or the family she'd grown up around. When she was 17, a history teacher assigned a project on family heritage. Most students came to class with old photos, stories about great-grandparents and family trees that stretched back generations. Hope brought a single page, blank except for her name. Her classmates tried not to stare, but she could feel their pity. That night, she locked herself in her room and cried for hours. Eleanor knocked softly, asking if she was okay. Hope lied and said it was just stress. But the truth was heavier than she could admit. She didn't know who she was. After graduation, Hope received a scholarship to study nursing at Ohio State University. Eleanor, now in her late 70s, cried tears of pride as she packed her things. "You were my greatest gift," she whispered, hugging her tightly. Hope smiled, but in her chest, that hollow space still ached. College gave her a new sense of independence. She made friends, went to parties, even fell in love once. But she never told anyone about the grocery cart or the missing pages in her story. It was easier to pretend she was like everyone else. Then, one afternoon during her sophomore year, while scrolling through her phone, she stumbled upon an ad for a DNA testing kit. Discover your roots. Find your family. Hope paused. Her heart began to race. It sounded ridiculous, like one of those things people did for fun. But something inside her, something she'd been suppressing for years, whispered, maybe it's time. She ordered the kit that same night. When the package arrived, she sat at her kitchen table, hands trembling, reading the instructions over and over. Spit into the tube, seal it, send it back. Simple, yet it felt monumental. Weeks passed. Hope almost forgot about it. Then one morning, an email notification appeared on her phone. Your DNA results are ready. Her breath caught as she opened the app. A colorful map appeared, highlighting regions across the US and Europe. But what truly made her heart skip was a new tab labeled DNA Matches. She tapped it. The first few results showed distant cousins, names she didn't recognize. Then at the top, one name stood out in bold, Rebecca Miles, predicted relationship, parent, child, 98.7%, match. Hope froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She read it again and again. Her vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. 31 years of questions. And now, a single name. Who was Rebecca Miles? Why had she never come forward? And what could possibly explain the reason she had been left in that grocery cart all those years ago? Hope spent the next few days consumed by thoughts. She Googled the name, searched social media, checked public records. There were dozens of Rebecca Miles across the country, but one profile caught her attention. A woman in her late 40s living in Indiana. A face with the same green eyes. The same birthmark faintly visible in a family photo. Hope's hand shook as she stared at the screen. It couldn't be a coincidence. But what if it was? What if she was wrong? Or worse, what if she wasn't ready to know the truth? Hope closed her laptop and took a deep breath. The truth was finally within reach. But once she found it, her life would never be the same again. Hope couldn't sleep that night. The glow of her laptop still haunted her eyes, the name Rebecca Miles looping endlessly in her mind. She lay awake, thinking about every possibility. That it could be a mistake, a cruel coincidence, or maybe the answer she'd been waiting her entire life for. By morning she had made a decision. She opened her laptop again and typed out a message on the DNA app. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, trembling. Hi, Rebecca. My name is Hope Whitman. I recently got my DNA results and it says we're a 98% match. I know this might be a shock, but I'd really like to talk if you're open to it. She stared at the message for several minutes before pressing send. Then she waited. Hours turned into days. Hope checked her phone obsessively, refreshing her inbox, her heart racing every time she saw a new notification. But nothing came. A week passed. Then two. Hope began to think she'd never hear back. Maybe Rebecca didn't want to know. Maybe the past was too painful. Then one evening, as she was leaving her nursing class, her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a new message. Hope, I don't even know what to say. I've been waiting for this message my entire life. Please, call me. Hope stopped right there on the sidewalk, frozen in disbelief. Tears welled in her eyes. Her hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped her phone. She dialed the number immediately. The phone rang once, twice, and then a soft voice answered. Hello? For a few seconds, Hope couldn't speak. Her throat felt tight. Rebecca? She finally whispered. There was silence on the other end. Then the voice, trembling. Hope? Is that really you? Both women cried without words for several moments, the sound of shared grief and disbelief filling the silence between them. When they finally began to talk, the truth started to unravel, slowly, painfully. Rebecca told her story. She had been 17 when Hope was born, scared, alone, and trapped in an abusive relationship with an older man. Her parents, deeply religious and ashamed, had refused to help her. When Rebecca went into labor, she gave birth in secret, terrified that the baby would be taken away. In her desperation, she left the newborn in a place where she thought someone kind might find her. Somewhere safe, visible, public. "I wanted you to be found," she said, sobbing. "I stayed nearby for hours just watching until I saw an old woman stop by the cart. When I saw her pick you up, I knew you'd be safe, but I hated myself for it every single day since." Hope listened in silence, tears streaming down her face. It was everything she had ever wanted to know, and everything she had feared to hear. "Why didn't you come for me later?" she asked quietly. Rebecca's voice broke. "I tried. I looked for you. But the hospital had no record of your birth and the police never released information. I thought maybe you hadn't survived." Hope's heart ached. She could hear the truth in Rebecca's trembling voice. The regret, the years of pain, the love buried under shame. They talked for hours that night, sharing stories, tears, even laughter. And by the end of the call, Rebecca said, "I want to see you, Hope. Please, let me see you." Hope hesitated, her pulse quickening. She'd dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that it was real, it felt terrifying. Still, she said yes. They agreed to meet the following weekend, halfway between Ohio and Indiana. As she hung up, Hope looked out her apartment window, her heart pounding. The woman who had given her life and then lost her was finally within reach. But Hope didn't know that this meeting would uncover more than love and reunion. It would also reveal secrets that neither of them was prepared to face. The day of the meeting arrived with a strange stillness in the air. Hope woke up before dawn, her heart pounding as if it already knew that her life was about to change forever. She dressed carefully, staring at herself in the mirror, the same eyes that had stared back at her for years without answers. She drove 4 hours to a small diner just outside Indianapolis, where they had agreed to meet. The parking lot was nearly empty, the morning sun glinting off the chrome of old pickup trucks. Hope's hands were sweating as she parked and looked around. Then she saw her. Rebecca Miles stood near the entrance, clutching a small paper bag. She looked nervous, older than her photos, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Then Rebecca stepped forward, tears already spilling down her cheeks. "Hope," she whispered. Hope's breath caught. She took one hesitant step, then another, and before she could think, she was in Rebecca's arms. They held each other tightly, as if afraid that letting go would make the other disappear again. 31 years of silence, regret, and longing melted into a single, trembling embrace. "I'm so sorry," Rebecca whispered over and over. "I'm so sorry for everything." Hope pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "I'm here," she said softly. "That's what matters now." They sat inside the diner, barely touching their food. Rebecca showed her old photos. A high school picture of herself at 17, her eyes bright but weary. A faded photo of a hospital bracelet she had kept all these years. "I never forgot you," she said. "Not for a single day." Hope reached across the table and took her hand. "I believe you," she said. And she meant it. But as their conversation went on, Hope noticed something odd. When Rebecca mentioned the name of Hope's biological father, her voice shook. She called him David but refused to say much else. Hope pressed gently. Was he abusive?" Rebecca nodded slowly. "Yes, and powerful. He came from a family that didn't want me anywhere near him. When I got pregnant, they paid me to disappear. I was scared, and I didn't know what else to do." Hope's stomach turned. She'd always imagined her birth parents as tragic but kind, not violent, not dangerous. "Did he ever try to find you? Or me?" Rebecca looked down at her coffee. "No, but his family, they knew. They knew you existed." Hope frowned. "What do you mean?" Rebecca hesitated, her voice trembling. "I received letters from someone in his family. For years. They wanted to know where you were. I never answered. I was terrified they'd take you away again." Hope's heart began to race. "So, someone out there knows about me?" Rebecca nodded. "Yes, and they might still be looking." The words hit Hope like a thunderclap. For the first time, the mystery of her abandonment took on a darker shape, one that went beyond desperation. There had been fear. There had been secrecy. Rebecca reached into her bag and pulled out a small, folded envelope, yellowed with age. She slid it across the table. "I kept this," she said. "It was the first letter they sent. Maybe it's time you read it." Hope unfolded it with trembling hands. Inside was a single sentence written in sharp, elegant handwriting. "You'll regret keeping her from us. The truth will come out." Hope's blood ran cold. She looked up at Rebecca, eyes wide. "Who wrote this?" Rebecca shook her head, tears filling her eyes. His mother. Hope's world tilted. She had expected pain, maybe forgiveness. But not this. Not the possibility that her past was tangled in threats, fear, and lies that went deeper than she ever imagined. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the diner windows. Hope stared at the letter, her reflection rippling in the glass. For the first time in her life, she realized that finding her mother was only the beginning. The truth was still waiting, and it wasn't done with her yet. Hope drove back to Ohio that night with the letter on the passenger seat beside her. The rain followed her for miles, streaking the windshield like falling memories she couldn't wipe away. Every word from Rebecca echoed in her head. They knew about me. They wanted me. The truth will come out. She didn't know what to believe anymore. When she got home, she called Eleanor, her adoptive mother, her real mother in every way that mattered. She told her about Rebecca, the reunion, the letter. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a soft sigh. "My sweet girl," Eleanor said gently. "Truth has many faces. What matters most is the one that gives you peace." Hope closed her eyes, letting those words sink in. A week later, she returned to Indiana to visit Rebecca again. This time, they met at Rebecca's small house, surrounded by blooming sunflowers. Hope noticed a photo on the mantel, Rebecca as a teenager, holding a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket. "You kept that?" Hope asked, smiling softly. Rebecca nodded. "It's all I had of you." They sat together for hours, sorting through memories and shadows. Rebecca told her everything, about David's family, their threats, their money, about the night she'd given birth in secret and the terrifying decision that followed. "I thought I was protecting you," Rebecca whispered, "but maybe I was just running away from the pain." Hope took her mother's hand. "You were 17. You did what you had to do." As the afternoon light faded, Hope unfolded the old letter once more. "Do you think they're still out there?" she asked quietly. Rebecca shrugged. "Maybe. But it doesn't matter anymore. You're here, you're safe, and that's all I ever prayed for." Hope smiled. For the first time, the questions in her heart didn't ache. They simply existed, like pages of a story finally closed. Later that evening, before leaving, Rebecca handed her a small box. Inside was the hospital bracelet from the day she was born, the faint letters spelling Baby Miles. Hope traced the name with her fingertips, tears filling her eyes. "This is yours," Rebecca said. "You were never just a secret. You were my hope." Those words, "my hope," echoed in her chest like a melody she'd been waiting to hear her whole life. Weeks turned into months. Hope introduced Rebecca to Eleanor, and the two women who had shaped her life met face to face. There were no accusations, no bitterness, only gratitude. They talked for hours, united by the shared love of the same girl. That night, as they hugged goodbye, Eleanor whispered to Rebecca, "Thank you for giving her to the world. I promise she's been loved every single day." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "And thank you for giving her a life I couldn't." Hope watched them embrace, realizing that both women were part of her story, one who had given her life and another who had given her a reason to live it. In the end, she didn't need to know every detail of her past. What mattered was that she'd found both halves of her heart, and that love in all its forms had survived. Months later, Hope shared her story online, hoping to inspire others who had been abandoned, adopted, or searching for lost family. The post went viral overnight. Thousands of people wrote to her, sharing their own stories of loss, love, and rediscovery. Hope replied to as many as she could. In one of her messages, she wrote, Sometimes the truth isn't what sets you free, forgiveness is. And with that, the mystery of the baby in the grocery cart finally came to rest. Hope stood at peace, knowing that she had not been abandoned. She had been found twice, once by the woman who saved her life and again by the one who gave it to her. Would you have had the courage to search for your past, even if it meant facing painful truths? If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because every shared story has the power to heal another heart.